I bought my Artisan 70D mid-gauge machine new 25 to 30 years ago. I've given it lots of hard use and love, and by now the sinker plate for it, pictured on the left, is showing some wear and tear. I have been able to locate new wheels and brushes and replace them, so still on the left you can see they're looking pretty good. But there are some internal brushes that at first I was unaware of, to my shame, and for which I have not yet found new replacements. I'm still looking, not going to toss that one, but in the meantime, I decided after much deliberation to try out the new replacement sinker plates sold by eBay seller Donald. They come from China, and they don't look exactly the same. But everything does match up perfectly. The new one is pictured on the right, and in this video I'll be trying it out. Both plates have tuck brushes or weaving brushes, whichever you prefer to call them, available, but I'm not using those in this test. Alright, let's challenge the machine to do some normal work and see how it performs. We'll start with the E-wrap cast on. So that you don't get confused, I want to give you a heads up. Some of this footage shows up in two movies, one about my new Artisan sinker plate and one about testing out I-cord used instead of a sponge bar. That is because I set the same challenges for the machine to do both, and I'm actually using both things in all of this footage. But we're going to talk about things a little bit differently. When I E-wrap, I nearly always pull the needles all the way forward to knit back the first couple of rows. So I did it for this machine. Here's an alternate cast on. Every other needle forward, knit across, which of course isn't knitting, it's just hanging yarn on every other needle. Then I hung this comb that I borrowed from my KX350 mid-gauge. That works because the Artisan and the KX350 are both 7mm mid-gauges, meaning there's 7mm between the needles. More accurately, they're on 7mm centers. It's a quick and dirty cast on, but very easy, and it only works if everything is in good shape, so that was a good test. It's great for swatching. It also works nicely if you want to drawstring later. Here I E-wrapped every other needle but put all in work and knitted across. And you notice I wasn't any too careful about where the needles were placed. They were a bit higgledy-piggledy, and they knitted back from hold leaning towards upper working position. No problem. Now we're going to challenge the machine to do some tuck stitch. The carriage needs to be set to hold for manual tuck stitch. The selected needles are the ones that'll tuck. So every fourth needle here is tucking. Now I've set it to knit back from hold, and it did. Tuck is challenging because those loops building up on the needles make it more likely that stitches will get dropped. When you go to set the carriage to knit back from hold, you do have to make sure that it's out of the way of the needles. The setting won't move if it's not, and I almost missed it there. Now I'm just checking whether it knits smoothly back from hold in general, which it just did. And now we're going to try some short rowing. Carriage needs to be set to hold, and what I'm doing here is the automatic wrap. One goes in to hold across from the carriage, plus one next to the already held needle on the near side that just knitted. I go into the automatic wrap a little bit more thoroughly in some other videos. But short rowing is another real challenge for a carriage, because in the center where this knitting is getting longer, it's also getting looser on the needles. And it's now time to hang a weight to put an end to any shenanigans. You always have to do that, but it's interesting to see how long before you have to do it. So we short rowed in, getting shorter and shorter rows. Now we are short rowing out, adding needles back to work. by putting them in upper working position, and the carriage picks them up if it's working right. And joy of joys, this one is working right. The short rowing successfully is a very good sign. We're almost back out to all the needles in work, and the bugaboos of short rowing have not occurred. Those would be drop stitches or carriage jams. There we go. Now I'm going to try the chain stitch cast on. The trick of this cast on, on every machine all the time, not just this time, is to get even chain stitches around every needle shank. They must not be too tight, because if they are, the carriage will have trouble knitting through them to make the first row. But too loose is bad too. It would be sloppy and could potentially cause jams. Threading the same yarn into the carriage after hanging the last loop on the needle. Again, I'm not being too careful with needle position, but it worked great. And as usual, I give the carriage a little help by pulling the needles forward to knit back from hold. The reason that helps is because you've done half the work. You pushed the needles through the stitches once. It only has to draw them back. And it's doing nicely. Now let's just do some knitting. Going very smoothly, no problems at all. By the way, this is 10 BB yarn at stitch size 4. And here is the chain stitched cast on. It still rolls and everything, but it's nice and neat. Here's the other swatch we did with the short rows and the tuck stitch. Came out quite nice. I'm very pleased with the performance of this machine in all respects. I want to assure you that this is not an advertising movie. This is my personal experience to share with fellow knitters. The Artisan company doesn't know about the movie yet, nor does Donald on eBay. This is all me. Eventually those guys will know, and I hope they enjoy it too. But this is for knitters.